I think human consciousness is a tragic misstep in evolution. When Rust Cohle speaks these words in the opening episode of True Detective, something shifts in the air. Not just for his partner Marty Hart, who dismisses it as nihilistic nonsense, but for millions of viewers who felt something they couldn't quite name. A cold recognition. A terrible whisper from a place they'd been avoiding their entire lives. In 2014, True Detective Season 1 became a cultural phenomenon. Matthew McConaughey, then riding the wave of his career resurrection, delivered a performance so unsettling that it transcended entertainment and entered the realm of philosophical testimony. The show dominated conversations, sparked think pieces, launched 1,000 Reddit theories. But here's what almost no one could articulate: why it felt so different. Why it didn't provide the cathartic release of a typical crime drama. Why, even after the case was solved and the killer caught, you felt more disturbed leaving the story than entering it. Because this wasn't comfort food. This wasn't procedural television where order is restored and justice prevails. This was something far more dangerous. True Detective Season 1 is a deliberate, meticulously constructed exploration of cosmic horror philosophy. It is a meditation on a question that haunts the edge of human thought. What if consciousness itself, this thing we celebrate as humanity's greatest achievement, is actually our greatest curse? What if self-awareness is not a gift but a cosmic mistake in an indifferent universe? The show's creator, Nick Pizzolatto, didn't just borrow from philosophy. He embedded the work of Thomas Ligotti, Peter Wessel Zapffe, and Arthur Schopenhauer directly into the dialogue. Names you've probably never heard. Thinkers who spent lifetimes staring into the abyss and reporting back with conclusions so bleak that mainstream culture has agreed, quietly, to ignore them. But True Detective wouldn't let you ignore them. It forced you to sit across from Rust Cohle in that interrogation room and listen. Really listen. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to decode the philosophical architecture hidden in plain sight. We were going to trace the lineage of cosmic horror from its literary origins to its weaponization on prestige television. And we're going to confront the question that Pizzolatto posed but never answered. Is Rust Cohle right? Is consciousness a tragic mistake? By the end, you won't have an answer, but you'll never be able to stop asking. Before we can understand what True Detective is doing, we need to go back to the source of cosmic horror itself. Back to a reclusive writer in Providence, Rhode Island, who in the early 20th century articulated a vision of reality so fundamentally disturbing that it birthed an entire genre. H.P. Lovecraft. Now, if you know Lovecraft at all, you probably know him as the guy who wrote about tentacled monsters and ancient gods. Cthulhu, the Necronomicon. Pop culture has turned his work into aesthetic fuel for heavy metal albums and video games, but that's a profound misunderstanding. Lovecraft wasn't interested in monsters. He was interested in something far more terrifying, the revelation of cosmic insignificance. See, traditional horror operates on a simple principle. There is evil. Evil can be defeated. The vampire can be staked. The demon can be exorcised. The serial killer can be caught. Order can be restored. Traditional horror, at its core, is deeply humanistic. It says, you matter, your courage matters, good can triumph. Cosmic horror says the opposite. Cosmic horror says, you are nothing. The universe is not a moral theater where good battles evil. It is an indifferent, incomprehensible mechanism that does not know you exist and would not care if it did. And the moment you glimpse the true nature of reality, the moment you see behind the curtain, you will go mad, because the human mind was not built to contain that knowledge. Lovecraft himself wrote, "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. Not fear of the monster in the dark, fear of the fact that the dark is infinite, and you are a speck of dust screaming into it. This is the foundation True Detective is built on." Now let's talk about Carcosa and the Yellow King. If you watch the show, These terms reverberated through the narrative like an ominous chant. Carcosa, the Yellow King, spirals, black stars, symbols that felt ancient and forbidden. Pizzolatto didn't invent these. He pulled them from a literary lineage over a century old. It starts with Ambrose Bierce, who first mentioned Carcosa in a short story in 1891, a mysterious, otherworldly city. Then Robert W. Chambers took that name and expanded it in his 1895 book, The King in Yellow. In Chambers' work, there's a play, also called The King in Yellow, that drives anyone who reads it insane. The play reveals truths about reality that the human psyche cannot withstand. Sound familiar? In True Detective, the Yellow King isn't just Errol Childress wearing a crown. He's a symbol. He represents forbidden knowledge, the thing you're not supposed to see. Carcosa, that decayed fortress in the Louisiana bayou, isn't just a crime scene. It's the place where the illusion breaks, where you confront the reality beneath the reality. And here's where Pizzolatto's genius becomes clear. He took the traditional detective genre, a genre built on Enlightenment principles, on the idea that rational thought can restore order, and he inverted it. Sherlock Holmes solves mysteries and the world makes sense again. Rust Cohle solves the mystery and discovers that meaning itself is the illusion. Knowledge doesn't liberate in cosmic horror. Knowledge destroys. The spiral symbol that appears throughout the show, carved into victims tattooed on Rust's notebook, is another direct invocation of cosmic horror. It's the symbol of infinite regression, the visual representation of the idea that beneath every answer is another question, and at the bottom of it all is not truth, but vertigo. Pizzolatto built True Detective on the foundation of a 100-year-old literary tradition that says, the universe is not your friend, and the closer you look, the more you realize you were never meant to understand it at all. But there's a deeper layer, a more specific source. And this is where we descend into the philosophical abyss that gave Rust Cohle his voice. In 2010, a horror writer named Thomas Ligotti published a book of non-fiction philosophy called The Conspiracy Against the Human Race. It wasn't a novel, it was a treatise, an extended argument for philosophical pessimism and antinatalism, the belief that human consciousness is a mistake, that suffering is intrinsic to existence, and that the most moral act our species could commit would be to stop reproducing and allow ourselves to quietly go extinct. Nick Pizzolatto read this book, and then he put it, almost word for word, into Rust Cohle's mouth. Listen to Cohle in episode 1. I think the honorable thing for our species to do is deny our programming, stop reproducing, walk hand in hand into extinction, one last midnight, brothers and sisters opting out of a raw deal. Now listen to Ligotti. The conspiracy against the human race is that we are all accessories to the crime of continuing it. This isn't homage. This is direct philosophical transmission. Ligotti himself drew from the work of a Norwegian philosopher named Peter Wessel Zapffe, a man so obscure that most philosophy students have never encountered him. In 1933, Zapffe published an essay called The Last Messiah, in which he argued that human consciousness is an evolutionary overshoot. We became too self-aware. We evolved the ability to ask questions that have no answers, to perceive our own mortality, to recognize the randomness and indifference of existence. And because that knowledge is unbearable, Zapffe said, we've developed 4 psychological defense mechanisms to repress it. 4 strategies to survive the horror of being conscious. First, isolation. We avoid thinking about death, suffering, and existential terror. We change the subject. We look away. Second, anchoring. We cling desperately to values, identities, careers, religions, anything that gives us the illusion of meaning and permanence. We tell ourselves stories about who we are and why it matters. Third, distraction. We fill every moment with entertainment, work, social media, substances, busyness, anything to avoid the silence where the questions live. And fourth, sublimation. We transform our existential anguish into art, philosophy, religion, or obsessive projects. We take the scream and turn it into something bearable. Rust Cohle embodies all four mechanisms, but especially the fourth. His detective work isn't just a job. It's sublimation. He takes his unbearable grief over his daughter's death, the event that shattered every illusion he had, and channels it into an obsessive hunt for meaning in a meaningless world. He works murders like a man trying to solve existence itself. But here's the philosophical foundation beneath even Zapffe. Arthur Schopenhauer, the 19th century German philosopher who argued that suffering is not an aberration, but the fundamental nature of existence. Schopenhauer said that life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. We suffer from unmet desires. And when we finally fulfill a desire, we don't experience lasting happiness. We experience a brief absence of suffering before boredom sets in and we start desiring again. Pleasure, in this view, is not a positive state. It's merely the temporary relief from pain, which means suffering is the default mode of consciousness. And if suffering is intrinsic, if consciousness is designed to generate more suffering than joy, then what does that say about reproduction? What does it say about bringing new conscious beings into existence? Ligotti and Zapffe would argue, it's an act of violence, a perpetuation of the crime. This is the philosophical engine beneath Rust Cohle's nihilism. His monologues aren't meant to sound cool or edgy. They're structured arguments from a real, if obscure, philosophical tradition. And here's why it resonates. Why millions of viewers, especially younger generations, heard Cohle speak and felt a shock of recognition. We live in an age defined by existential dread, climate collapse, economic precarity, information overload, the erosion of shared meaning. The algorithms that feed us endless content designed to make us feel inadequate and anxious. Cohle speaks directly to the psychological reality of late capitalism and ecological crisis. He articulates the quiet suspicion that many of us carry but rarely voice, that we were trapped in a system we didn't choose. That meaning is a story we tell ourselves to avoid despair, and that consciousness might not be the gift we were taught it was. The Tuttle cult's crimes in True Detective, the ritualistic abuse of children, function as a grotesque metaphor. They represent the horror of bringing innocent life into a world designed to devour it. Rust looks at those crimes and sees not aberration but pattern, not evil but inevitability. And the question the show forces us to confront is this: is he wrong? But philosophy doesn't exist in a vacuum. True Detective's genius isn't just that it adapted Ligotti and Zapffe. It's that it dramatized their ideas through two characters locked in a 17-year philosophical war. Marty Hart and Rust Cohle. One man who clings to meaning, one man who stares into the void, and their partnership is the central existential conflict of modern life, playing out in a Louisiana interrogation room. Let's start with Marty Hart. On the surface, he's the everyman, the normal one. He's got a family, a straightforward moral code, a simple understanding of good and evil. He goes to work, comes home, tries to be a decent husband and father. He represents what most of us aspire to, a stable life anchored in conventional meaning. But watch closely. Marty is a walking embodiment of Zapfe's repression mechanisms. He uses anchoring. His identity is built on his role as family man, detective, protector. When those roles are threatened, he falls apart. He clings to them not because they're true, but because without them, he has nothing. He uses distraction, infidelity, alcohol, work, anything to avoid sitting alone with his thoughts. His affairs aren't about desire, they're about escape. Escape from the suffocating realization that his life might not mean what he needs it to mean. And when Rust speaks uncomfortable truths, Marty doesn't engage philosophically. He calls him crazy. He tells him to shut up. Because Rust's honesty is a direct threat to Marty's psychological armor. If Rust is right, if meaning is a construct, If values are illusions, then everything Marty has built his life on collapses. Marty tells Rust, "You be like the Michael Jordan of being a son of a bitch." But what he's really saying is, stop making me think about this. And here is the tragic irony, Marty's hypocrisy. The fact that he preaches family values while cheating on his wife isn't a character flaw. It's necessary self-deception. To live a normal life, you have to lie to yourself. You have to believe that your daily routines matter, that your choices have cosmic significance, that you're the hero of a meaningful story. Marty's lies are the price of functioning. Now look at Rust Cohle, the philosopher who can't stop thinking. His backstory is essential. The death of his daughter didn't just wound him, it annihilated every illusion he had. Grief stripped away the comforting narratives. He saw clearly that the universe does not protect the innocent, that love does not conquer death. That consciousness is a fragile accident in an indifferent void. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Rust's alcoholism, his obsessive work habits, his monologues, they're all forms of sublimation. He's taken his existential horror and channeled it into detective work. He hunts killers with the fervor of a man trying to impose order on chaos, even though he knows intellectually that order is a human invention. And here, as the heartbreaking contradiction at the center of his character, Rust Cohle claims life is meaningless, that consciousness is a mistake, that the honorable thing would be extinction, but he works harder than anyone. He sacrifices years of his life undercover. He nearly dies in Carcosa trying to stop a killer. His actions betray his philosophy. He can't help but care, even though caring in his worldview is irrational. The monologues he delivers, the ones that captivated audiences, aren't meant for Marty. They're sermons he's preaching to himself. He's trying to convince himself of his own nihilism, and the fact that he has to keep repeating it reveals the crack in his armor. He's not as detached as he pretends. Their partnership is a dialectic, a philosophical debate that spans nearly 2 decades. Marty needs Rust because Rust keeps him honest. Rust cuts through Marty's bullshit, forces him to confront his hypocrisy, refuses to let him coast on comfortable lies. And Rust needs Marty because Marty tethers him to humanity. Marty's mundane concerns, his family drama, his petty grievances, are lifelines that prevent Rust from disappearing entirely into abstraction. Their arguments are never just personal, they're philosophical. Can you live with the truth? Can you live without meaning? What's worse, Marty's necessary self-deception or Rust's unbearable honesty? And here's why this matters now in 2025. Why this show continues to resonate. Rust represents the doom-scrolling generation, the ones who see through everything, who've been fed so much information about ecological collapse, systemic injustice, and the manufactured nature of consumer culture that sincerity feels naive. They're exhausted by knowing too much and being able to do too little. Marty represents the mainstream coping strategy. Ignore what you can't change. Focus on your immediate circle. Embrace ignorance as a survival mechanism. Keep your head down and your routines intact, and most of us contain both. We toggle between them. Part of us knows the truth Rust speaks. Part of us needs Marty's illusions to get through the day. True detective's genius is that it never tells you who's right. It doesn't valorize Rust's nihilism or Marty's denial. It shows the cost of each position. Rust is brilliant but broken, isolated, borderline suicidal. Marty is functional but shallow, disconnected, blind to his own cruelty. The show asks, which wound can you live with? And then it forces both men to walk into Carcosa together. That final confrontation, descending into the ruined fortress, facing Errol Childress, nearly dying in the dark, is the moment when philosophy becomes physical, when you stop talking about the void and actually enter it. What happens when you confront the thing you've been avoiding your entire life? And that brings us to the ending. the moment that divided audiences and philosophers alike. Rust Cohle, lying in a hospital bed, tells Marty about his near-death experience. He says he felt something. His daughter, her love, a presence that made him feel not alone. And then, looking up at the night sky, he says something that seems to contradict everything he's argued for 8 episodes. Once there was only dark. You ask me, light's winning. Is this a betrayal of his philosophy? A hopeful turn? Or the most tragic statement of all? Let's break it down. 3 interpretations. The hopeful reading says, Rust has evolved. His journey through trauma, isolation, and the literal descent into Carcosa has brought him to the other side. He's discovered that love, the memory of his daughter, his bond with Marty, transcends nihilism. Meaning isn't a lie. It's something we create together, and that creation is real. Philosophy bends in the face of human connection. The light is winning because Rust has chosen to believe it is. The pessimist reading says, Rust is a broken man clinging to a hallucination. His near-death experience was a neurological event. The brain's last desperate attempt to comfort itself in the face of oblivion. He hasn't transcended his philosophy. He's succumbed to Zapffel's repression mechanisms, specifically anchoring and sublimation. He's constructing meaning because the alternative, dying alone in the dark with nothing, is unbearable. The light isn't winning. He's just lying to himself now, like everyone else. And then there's the ambiguous reading, the one I think the show wants us to sit with. Both are true. Meaning is a choice we make in the face of an indifferent universe. It's not discovered. It's not handed down by gods or validated by cosmic order. It's something fragile and human that we build together, knowing full well it could collapse at any moment. Rust isn't betraying his philosophy. He's living out the existential paradox. You act as if meaning exists, even when you doubt it, because the alternative is paralysis. Albert Camus, the French absurdist philosopher, wrote about Sisyphus, the figure from Greek myth condemned to push a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down. Camus said, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy, not because the task has meaning, but because Sisyphus chooses to embrace it anyway. That's human freedom, the ability to create meaning in a meaningless world." True Detective doesn't solve philosophy. It dramatizes the impossibility of certainty. Carcosa is defeated. Errol Childress is arrested. The case is closed. But the idea of Carcosa, the cosmic indifference it represents, remains. Suffering continues. Consciousness persists. The detective genre itself becomes a metaphor. We solve small mysteries, the murders, the crimes, while the big mystery of existence remains forever unsolved. And this is why the show captivated a generation. We live in Rust's world. We're drowning in information about things we can't control. We've seen behind the curtain of politics, media, capitalism, and it's revealed structures designed to exploit rather than enlighten. Meaning has collapsed into competing narratives, none of them fully believable. But we still need Marty's world. We need routines, relationships, chosen values. We need to act as if our lives matter, even when we're not sure they do. True Detective doesn't offer comfort. It offers a challenge. Keep going. Not because the universe cares, but because you do. Not because meaning is guaranteed, but because you're capable of creating it. Rust and Marty walk out of that hospital together. Not victorious, not defeated, just enduring. So let me ask you the question that True Detective refuses to answer. When you look at the night sky, do you see the darkness or the stars? Do you see the infinite void that doesn't know you exist? Or do you see points of light, fragile, temporary, but undeniably there? Is consciousness a tragic mistake? An evolutionary accident that condemned us to suffer the knowledge of our own insignificance? Or is consciousness the universe's only way of experiencing beauty, love, wonder? the only mechanism by which reality becomes aware of itself. True detective doesn't answer. Ligotti and Zapffe don't answer. Camus doesn't answer. Neither can I. But here's what I know. You watched this show and felt something shift. You heard Rust Cohle speak and recognized a voice you'd been avoiding. You finished the series and couldn't stop thinking about it, even though you couldn't articulate why. That restlessness is the point. Philosophy isn't about arriving at final answers. It's about learning to live with the questions. It is about confronting the terror and beauty of being conscious in an indifferent cosmos and choosing over and over again what you are going to do with that awareness. Rust chose detective work. Marty chose family. Pizzolatto chose art. What will you choose? The light's winning, or it isn't. But you have to decide which story you are going to tell yourself when you walk into your own personal Carcosa. And you will walk into it. We all do. The only question is, will you walk out?